A warm welcome to you, sir, on this holy city of Prayagraj. We are grateful to you that you spared your valuable moments for us, and on just a single writing, you got agreed to my request. What a humble human being you are. Sir, this is something that has to be that one can learn from you. Let me take this opportunity to introduce you all formally to the journey of Dr. Shouvik, sir. Dr. Shouvik sir is currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of Marketing and Entrepreneurship at Dhofar University in Sultanate of Oman. Sir is a product of prestigious Banaras Hindu University, did his MBA and PhD both from the same university, did his PhD from Magad University, I'm sorry. He has around 2.5 decades of experience and has authored around 40 research papers in reputed journals, Scopus and Web of Science. He has presented research papers in 5 countries, has started a new program, sir, has started program in logistics and supply chain management, which he'll be speaking today about at Dhofar University, and has served as the chair of the Department of Marketing and Entrepreneurship for 3 years. What an excellent journey it has been. He is actively engaged in administrative activities and community services, has also delivered lectures on several topics at universities in several countries. His areas of research interest are marketing, consumer behavior, and entrepreneurship. So please join your hands together, dear students and honorable faculty members. We today have with us a very senior academician, management expert, Dr. Shouvik Sanyal, sir. So it's over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Sudhanshu Singh. I wish to first of all extend my gratitude to the management of LDC Institute of Technical Studies, Prayagraj, and especially to Dr. Sudhanshu Singh, who is my old friend and colleague. We have worked together in Banaras, and it is a great pleasure to see him after such a long time. Thank you, sir, for providing me an opportunity to interact with your esteemed faculty members, and it's always a pleasure to interact with the students. They are the leaders of the future. Okay, they are who we are for, and we hope to put in our best efforts to shape their career and their professional competencies, so that they can serve their organizations and serve the country well in the future. It's indeed a pleasure, and it's indeed an honor. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
So today I will be, can I just share my screen once again?
I'll stop sharing my.
Yeah.
I already stopped.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Clearly visible.
Okay. So today the topic on which I'll be talking on is issues and challenges in the area of logistics and supply chain management. And as we all know that logistics and supply chain management is one of the key functions of any organization. And it is actually the backbone. It is the back end of any organization, big or small. No organization, whatever be the size of the organization, whether it is a small store or it is a multinational company, can work effectively without having a strong and resilient, supply chain and logistics to back it up. So, and also the pandemic of the last 2-3 years has put the logistics in the spotlight, as we had so many crippling shortages due to the closure of ports and seaports and blockages and bottlenecks in the supply chain. And this has led to huge, shortages in raw material availability for manufacturers all over the world, which in turn has led to, big delays in products coming to the markets. And as the pandemic eases out and as the pent-up demand is now surging, and demand, especially for things like consumer products, automobiles, etc., are surging across the world, companies are struggling actually to ease the backlog in their supply chain, so that the products can reach the markets on time. So this is basically the time when people have realized that the traditional methods and approaches and strategies of supply chain management have to be relooked at, because nobody could anticipate something like the COVID-19 pandemic happening. But this was a one-off event, black swan event, and we don't know, things can happen in the future with the conflict that is now happening between Russia and Ukraine, and possible spreading of this conflict and other countries getting involved. This can even lead to, you know, further issues in the future. So the time has come when managers have to rethink, relook at their supply chains and logistics and restructure their strategies accordingly to keep in mind all these volatilities, all these unknown and unforeseen conditions. So just to start off with my lecture, first of all, I'll just tell you what I'm going to talk about. And I will just, first of all, you know, give a brief background on what is logistics and what is supply chain and what are the objectives of the supply chain, what is the importance of the supply chain. Then gradually I will come to what are the issues and challenges that are currently being faced by supply chain professionals and managers around the globe. And we will finally look at some ways, some solutions to how the managers can, you know, equip themselves to handle these challenges and overcome these challenges. So first of all, start off with what is logistics. Well, we all know what is logistics basically, but there are so many definitions available. You can find in several books and on websites. So just to put it in a simple manner, logistics is nothing but the process of planning and executing the efficient and effective transportation and storage of goods from point A to point B, that is from the point of origin, from the point of manufacture, up to the point of consumption, that is until the good reaches the hands of the final end customers. So here, as you can see, the definition says that it has two parts. First of all, we have to have a plan. Under logistics, we will be having plans for different things such as transportation, scheduling of our routes, okay, scheduling for inventory management, scheduling of inventory, management of inventory basically, warehouse management, location and types of warehouses needed, and several other things. So, and the second part is the execution. So how are we going to execute these strategies in order to ensure that our goods, so that there is a smooth flow of goods, whether it is raw materials, parts, semi-finished products, finished products, whatever the case may be, from the point of consumption, that is from the supplier to the manufacturer, and from the manufacturer to the seller. So actually logistics has two parts, as we all know, that is inbound and outbound, upstream and downstream. That is, inbound is what is coming in, what is coming from the suppliers, that is the raw materials and the parts and the semi-finished goods, etc. And the outbound logistics basically is the finished products that will go out from the manufacturer to the seller, and finally from the seller it will be passed on to the hands of the consumers. So basically speaking, logistics has two components, that is transportation, using all the various modes of transportation or using multimodal transportation as the case may be. And the second component of logistics is warehousing, or we can say the management of inventory, that is the storing of the products, recording the products that are coming in and going out, keeping an inventory of the products and making sure that we have enough stock on hand to satisfy our needs, the needs of our operations, and to also ensure that we have a buffer stock of products in hand, just in case there is an emergency or unforeseen circumstances. So these two are basically the components of logistics. And logistics per se is also in itself a component of the supply chain. So we just go on to what is the supply chain basically. So to put it in a simple way, supply chain basically, we can say it is everything from A to Z. It encompasses everything from the point of origin of the raw material up to when the product reaches the hand of the customer. So we don't just start from the supplier, but actually we start from the origin of the raw material. So for example, there is a company which is manufacturing furniture. Let us say, for example, furniture is made from wood. So if somebody asks that what is the origin, what is the starting point of the supply chain for furniture? Well, the supply chain of the furniture does not start from the company which is supplying the wooden planks to the manufacturer. Actually, the wood comes from trees, right? And trees are in the jungle. So the supply chain in this case starts when some people will go to the jungle and they will cut down those trees. So we go back right to the source of the raw material. That is where the supply chain starts, and it encompasses all the activities that are associated with the flow and the transformation. Flow and transformation means the transportation, the storage, the manufacturing, the selling, the marketing, everything. The flow and the transformation of the goods from raw material stage right through to the end user, as well as the associated information flows. So as we will see in upcoming slides, that there are basically three flows that are happening in a supply chain. Apart from material, there is a flow of information to and fro between the members of the supply chain, as well as the flow of funds or money. So basically, three things flow in a supply chain. It is the material, the information, and the funds. So what is supply chain management then? Basically, it is the integration or the application of management principles, to get the maximum or to optimize our supply chain. So we can say that the supply chain management is nothing but the integration of all these activities, right from the supply to the manufacturing to the selling to the marketing, to improve the supply chain relationships in order to achieve a sustainable competitive advantage. So basically, a supply chain can give us a competitive advantage if our supply chain is faster, better, leaner than others. Then it is definitely a competitive advantage. If we are able to achieve the lowest cost supply chain, then definitely it is a competitive advantage. If we can access sources of raw materials that are not available to other manufacturers, then definitely our supply chain can be a source of sustainable competitive advantage, because this is something which cannot be copied. As we know, a competitive advantage, one of the characteristics of a competitive advantage is that it should be difficult to imitate. So products can be imitated, but processes like a supply chain are very difficult to imitate. So this is something which can give you a sustained, that is a long-term competitive advantage. This is a diagram or a figure that when we talk about supply chain management, basically, as I said, it goes from A to Z. It talks about the raw materials, it talks about suppliers, it includes the manufacturing, that is the operations, and in the operations, we will do demand forecasting. Demand forecasting, as we will see, is one of the key challenges that are facing supply chain managers due to the volatility in demand that is there, especially in the global markets. Then it includes forecasting, it includes supply planning, it includes planning for raw material procurement. So there are many things that are involved when you come to operations part. Then comes the distribution part, which is basically the logistics part. So distribution and logistics, as I said, is just a small part of the supply chain, which involves the transportation of the material and the finished goods, as well as the storage, the inventory, and the warehousing. And then it also includes supply chain management, also includes marketing and sales activities, which are carried out at the retailer's location. And finally, the customer. The customer is also a part of the supply chain. The customer is indeed a very important part of the supply chain, because all these activities, at the end, we are doing or performing all these activities just so that we can serve the customer and we can give him the best value through our activities, through our products, and through our supply chain. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, audible clearly.
Okay. So as we continue to talk a little bit more about the supply chain, so we can say that the supply chain involves the constant flow of information, products, and funds between the different stages. So what are the stages of the supply chain? We will see it in the next slide. So for example, a store, which is towards the end of the supply chain, a store or a shop provides, basically, what does a store provide? The store provides the product, the pricing, and the available information to the customer. The customer in turn who will provide the funds, that is, he will pay the price, the money to buy the funds, that is, he will transfer the funds to the store. The store in turn will then convey the point of sales data, which they will gather from the customers through the barcoding and other systems that they have, and as well as replenishment orders. Replenishment means whatever they need to replace, to fulfill the orders. As the supply goes down, you have to keep on filling up your stocks, that is replenishment orders. They will convey this information to the warehouse or the distributor, who will then transfer the replenishment order via the trucks back to the store. The store The money that they get from the customer, they will then transfer the purchase funds to the distributor after the replenishment is done. The distributor will also provide several things such as pricing information and send delivery schedules to the store and coordinate with them. In turn, the distributor will then coordinate with the company and will give them orders from time to time, which will then be fulfilled by the company. So in short, we can say that a supply chain basically is nothing but a chain which is connecting several organizations. So that is why we call it a supply chain, because it is a link, it is a bond between several organizations who are interdependent and who are working together in order to process the funds, in order to process the raw materials, in order to manufacture the raw materials and make it available to the customer. So in any supply chain, in the simplest of supply chain, we have got these stages. We have got a supplier. We have got not just one supplier. A company can have several suppliers. Some companies, big companies, have even hundreds of suppliers. They will supply the materials, raw materials, etc., parts, machinery, whatever needed by the manufacturer. Several suppliers also supply to several manufacturers. We are just taking a simple example. Then from the manufacturer, the products goes to the distributor or the wholesaler. From there, it is transferred to the retail store, and from there, it goes to the customer. So this is why we call it a chain, because it is a chain in which there are a minimum of 3 organizations in any supply chain. There must be a minimum 1 supplier, 1 manufacturer, and at least 1 retailer. There can be, as I said, complex supply chains where there are multiple suppliers, multiple manufacturers, and multiple distributors and retailers. And regarding the flows, what is flowing upward and backward through a supply chain? That is the information regarding anything. For example, the manufacturer will send their requirements to the supplier, what materials they need, what will be the specifications of the raw materials, specifications of the machines, etc., the prices that are to be quoted, etc. This is the flow of the information. So this information will continuously keep on flowing through the supply chain, and funds, as I said, are flowing backward from the customer to the retailer, retailer to the distributor. Distributor will pay to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer will pay for the products that they have bought from the supplier. And of course, materials that are flowing up and down through the supply chain. And just as I was saying that the end point of the supply chain is the customer. So basically, the customer is also an integral part of the supply chain. We tend to forget about the customer when we discuss supply chains. We focus more on the suppliers and manufacturers. We tend to forget about the customers. But we have to remember that the primary purpose for the existence of any supply chain at the end is to satisfy customer needs. And in the process, we will, of course, generate profits for the company. So thus, where does the supply chain activities begin? Supply chain activities begin with a customer order. When a customer walks into a store or he places an order with a retailer. And when does it end? It ends up when a customer has paid for his or her purchase and he or she purchases the product from the retail store. Therefore, the term supply chain will conjure up images of product or supply moving from suppliers to manufacturers, to distributors, to retailers. So this is basically the chain that we are talking about. And all these organizations are interdependent. They cannot work alone. They can only work with each other. So it is important to visualize, as we have said, the information, funds, and product flows that are moving along both the directions of the supply chain. Of course, the supply chain may imply that there is only one player involved at every stage of the supply chain. But like I said, in reality, a manufacturer may receive material, for example, from several suppliers, and then there may be several distributors. This is what we call the length and depth of the supply chain. Thus, we can say that supply chains, we can look at it from the angle that supply chains are basically nothing but networks. They are networks of organizations working together. That is why sometimes supply chains is also known as or called supply network or a supply web. It is a web of companies, organizations working together to bring the products to the final customers. So this is what I was talking about. Multiple suppliers sending to multiple distributors, manufacturers supplying to multiple distributors. So supply chains can be relatively simple, or they can be extremely complicated. That depends upon the scale of operations and how many suppliers are supplying to how many manufacturers in the supply chain. Now let's come to objectives. So what are the basic objectives of a supply chain? To be very clear, the basic objective of every supply chain is to maximize the overall value that is generated by the activities of the supply chain. So what is the value basically? The value is the value added. Okay, the value is nothing but the benefits that we are providing to the customers at each stage of the supply chain as compared to the cost. So value is nothing but a ratio of benefits received to costs paid by the customer at each end of the supply chain. So another way of looking at value is that value is nothing but the difference between what the final product is worth to the customer, that is the price that he or she is paying for the product, and the effort that the supply chain is spending to fulfill the customer's request. So this is another way of looking at the objective. Of course, there are several other objectives of the supply chain. For example, to reduce the cost, to reduce delivery time, to ensure that the right products are delivered at the right place, at the right time, at the right location, okay, in the right condition. These are what we call the 7 R's of logistics, which I am sure all the students must have studied and read about. So thus, we can say that for most commercial supply chains, value is strongly correlated with the supply chain profitability. So the efficiency or the profits that is generated by your supply chain is directly in proportion to the value that the supply chain can create for all the members of this supply chain. Supply chain profitability basically is the difference between the revenue that is generated from the customer, that is the money we receive from the customer, minus the total cost that we have incurred across our supply chain: cost of manufacturing, cost of purchasing, cost of transporting. So the price difference between what we get from the customer minus all the costs across the supply chain, this is nothing but the profitability of the supply chain, which is then divided among the retailers, the manufacturers, and the suppliers and other members of the supply chain. There are basically different ways at which practitioners have looked at supply chains. And the most common views of a supply chain are of two types. One is the cycle view, where we have divided the supply chain into different cycles, basically where cycle is the interface where two successive stages of a supply chain are meeting each other or interacting with each other. We will see in the subsequent slides. And the second and very contemporary view basically is about supply chain as a push-pull. The push-pull is basically the same that we use in the concept of marketing. Basically, push is when you are doing something in response to a customer order, that is pull. And push is when you are doing something in anticipation of a customer order. That is, you are first of all anticipating the orders and you are creating the product. That is, you are trying to push the product to the customer. That is the pushed strategy of a supply chain. And pull is basically when you are waiting for the customer orders to come in, where we use concepts like postponement, assembly postponement, where we are waiting for the last minute to, assemble our products. We wait till the last minute. We will only assemble our products when we finally have the customer orders in hand. This goes a long way in reducing the inventory costs and overall reducing our cost of production. So the push and the pull view, these are the two views of the supply chain. Let's go ahead. The pull process, like I said, the pull process are those which are initiated by the customer order. We wait for the customer order and we start our processing, we start our assembling when the customer order finally comes in. That is, we make the parts, we keep them in parts, and then they are assembled. We assemble them in the warehouse when the customer order comes in. And the opposite of that is the push process, which are initiated and performed in anticipation. Here we are manufacturing the product before we are getting the order, because we are forecasting the demand of from the market, and we are making the production according to our forecasts. But remember, forecasts are not foolproof. There are many occasions when our forecasts may fail. So forecasts may fail in two ways: either they will fall short, or they will be maybe overly optimistic. In both the cases, the company will have massive trouble in meeting with the demand, whether it is demand exceeds the forecast or demand is less than the forecast. So a customer basically pulls the things towards themselves, while the producer pushes the things towards customers. So nowadays, companies are moving from the push aspect of the supply chain and going towards the pull aspect. This is what we are doing in marketing as well, that nowadays in marketing, we are trying to anticipate first of all, understand the needs of the customer, and then make our products according to the needs and demands of the customer, as compared to the previous selling concept where we used to make the product first according to the demand forecast, and then we would try to push the product aggressively to the customer. Then we come to the cycle view. So in a cycle view, basically we know that there are five basically stages of a supply chain, and this is what we mean by a cycle view. So these 5 stages can be divided into 4 process cycles. What is a cycle? A cycle is the interface where 2 aspects or 2 parts of a supply chain are meeting each other. So basically we can divide the supply chain into 4 cycles. One is where the customer is interfacing with the retailer. We call that a customer order cycle. This is where the customer gives the orders. Then the retailer, where the retailer is interfacing with the distributor, we call it the replenishment cycle, where the retailer will ask the distributor to send products as per the customer orders to the stores. Then we come to the next cycle where the distributor is interacting with the manufacturer, and the distributor is sending their orders to the manufacturer. This is called the manufacturing cycle. And the last cycle is the procurement cycle. We are going backwards basically. Procurement cycle is when, according to the demand from the distributors, the manufacturers will start sending orders, procuring orders, or procuring the material from the suppliers. This is basically called the procurement cycle. So for a manager, it makes sense to break down the supply chain into these cycles, because we have different types of activities and different types of processes that are happening at different stages of each cycle. So we take the cyclical view of the supply chain, and then we try to integrate these activities together so that our supply chain basically becomes a value chain. So basically, this is what I was talking about, that each cycle will occur at the interface where 2 successive stages of the supply chain are interacting with each other. So in this way, 5 stages will result in 4 supply chain process cycles. Now, it is not always that these supply chain cycles are clearly separated. Sometimes the demarcation is a little difficult to make. So we'll not go into the details of that. Like, for example, we know that companies which sell directly to the customers, they bypass the retailers and distributors. For example, Dell, for example, in America, they assemble a product, they customize the products according to the orders that they receive on their website. So they are not present in offline stores. They have an online presence, and they take orders via their website, and they customize the products, and then they send them directly to the customer locations. So in this case, we are bypassing some cycles of the supply chain. So this was briefing a little bit about what are supply chains and what do they do and how do they work. Now we come to the importance. Well, the importance is very clear. There are they are the back end. Basically, they are the backbone of the operations of any company. So what are basically the importance of supply chain? Where do they lie? So the first is to deliver the right assortment, the right variety of products at the right place at the right time. The second importance of supply chain, like I said, is there is a lot of scope for cost reduction. So through the supply chain, we can reduce our operating costs, we can reduce our production costs. How can we reduce our production costs? For example, if we are able to find out sources of supply at lower prices, if we can find suppliers who are able to sell us products at lower prices, for example, this will help us to lower our production cost. If we can reduce the cost of transportation, for example, this will help us to overall, again, reduce the production costs. And of course, if we are able to manage the supply chain properly, if we are able to create a lean, thin, and agile adaptable supply chain, then we can help in improving the financial position of the company by increasing the profits. We can increase the profits by reducing the cost of operations, cost of supply chains, and we can also, very importantly, we can decrease the fixed assets. How can we decrease the fixed assets? Because we can work with lesser levels of inventory. If we can reduce our lead times, if we can get the products in a reduced time cycle, yes, we will need to store lesser products in our inventory. So in that case, we can reduce our holding cost, our carrying cost, and therefore we can in fact reduce our overall inventory costs, and we can decrease the amount of fixed assets that we are holding. Eventually, supply chains are integral, important to enable products to reach the customers, and these products basically are going to enrich the quality of life, improve the quality of life, make life more comfortable, make life more easier for millions of people across the world. So an indirect effect of supply chains is that it helps to improve the quality of lives. Another very big importance of supply chain, and why nowadays more and more organizations are offering master's programs and bachelor programs in logistics and supply chain, is that it is a huge employment generator. Directly and indirectly, supply chains create millions of jobs across the world. For example, in transportation, in trucking companies, shipping companies, at ports, at warehouses, in operations. So directly or indirectly, supply chains are great employment generators. And as you know, every country nowadays is struggling to is fighting with the specter of unemployment. Okay, unemployment is a big issue that is facing countries all over the world. So the importance of supply chains cannot be underestimated, basically, and they cannot be overemphasized. Now we come to the crux of our today's lecture, basically. So what are basically the issues and challenges that are facing supply chain managers? Well, issues and challenges were there before, but these issues and challenges have multiplied and exploded thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, which was a nightmare for logistics and supply chain professionals and product managers and operations managers across the world. Well, we will discuss some of the key issues that are facing supply chain managers as of now. The first issue that I would like to focus on is the increasing complexity of products. Nowadays, the products are becoming more and more complex. Okay, complex in the sense that they are becoming very much technological. Technology is advancing, is being continuously upgraded. So products are becoming more complex. We have semiconductor chips and circuits and things going into even simple products which did not use these products before. For example, look at cars nowadays. So cars nowadays basically have on board, they have, multiple computers, and multiple sensors. We did not have these things even 10, 15 years back. So as these things are improving, the products are becoming more and more technologically complex, and they will require more and more parts. So wherever the number of parts are increasing, the supply chain for the company continues to become wider and wider and more complex. So the thing is that products are becoming increasingly complex, and they also need more sophisticated parts and supplies. This makes the supply chain more complicated, and also you need more vendors, you need more suppliers. And due to rapid changes in technology, the product life cycle is also very much shortening. So nowadays, a laptop or a mobile will go out of fashion or out of technology, or new upgrades will come every 6 months, for example. So the leverage that before supply chain managers had, that a product had a life cycle of 5 years and 10 years, that leverage is gone. Now there are products where life cycles are less than 1 year. So you have to come up with new products or new models ever so often. So that means you have to search for new supply bases, you have to search for new suppliers. So this is creating complexities in the supply chain, and these are creating a lot of challenges for supply chain managers. Increase in transportation costs. Well, like I said, initially the expectations was that after the pandemic, it will take a long time for consumer demand to come back. But on the contrary, what has happened that the pent up demand which people were not able to spend money, they were not able to buy things in the last 2 to 3 years. The pent up demand is now being released all of a sudden. And because of that, what has happened? There are huge bottlenecks in transport supply chains, especially when it comes to shipping. So the need for container shipping, for example, has increased considerably. And the end result has been that there has been 20 to 30% increase in the transportation cost, especially shipping freight charges have increased 20 to 30%. Air freight charges have in some cases, they have even become double. So transportation costs have gone through the roof. So how to manage the transportation costs, how to find alternative sources of transportation that are cheaper? This is one huge challenge that is facing supply chain managers in these days. Supply chain management, that is searching for new suppliers, making contracts with new suppliers, maintaining relationship with new suppliers, and managing our old suppliers. This is known as supply-based management. As the company's products product more varieties of products, and the products are becoming more complex, the supply base is becoming bigger and bigger, and companies are going farther and farther away to other parts of the world to search for low cost materials and low cost products, etc. So supply based management also has become a very important and critical challenge for supply chain managers. Of course, the volatile global environment, we are seeing so many things happening, the recessionary conditions, inflationary conditions all over the world, tense political situation in Europe and other places, changing political scenarios, right-wing governments, nationalistic governments coming into power all over the world, and which are, they are more nationalistic in nature. They are not in favor of globalization. They are in favor of promoting their local industries. All these have, created several challenges for international product managers and international or global supply chain managers. The global environment continues to be very, very volatile, and the volatility will not end anytime soon. So you have to be adaptive. You have to be lean. The word that we use in supply chain is agile and lean. How can we adapt ourselves to face the sudden changes in the global environment? Then comes, of course, the technology factor. So when it comes to the supply chain, for example, there are several new technologies which have the potential to vastly enhance the way we approach the traditional supply chain. For example, blockchain technology, which increases the visibility of products. We can understand, we can see our products right going up to the source of the raw material if we use blockchain. There are other technologies like artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, robotics, etc., which are creating huge changes in the way supply chains are being managed. Even though these systems and processes are intended to make our e-commerce and other processes efficient and cost effective, but the challenge is how to procure them. Initially, they are quite cost intensive. You have to spend a lot of money to implement these technologies. So how can you implement them, and how can you integrate them in your existing supply chain? Or what upgradations you have to make in your supply chain infrastructure to adapt to these technologies? This is a very big challenge that is facing managers in supply chains. Shortages of raw material, yes. Raw material shortages still, there is a spillover from the pandemic. We are still facing insufficient shortages of raw material. For example, we had the semiconductor shortage, due to shortage problems coming from Taiwan, which is the primary source of semiconductors. Semiconductors and chips are used in all kinds of electronic products, from mobile phones to cars, for example. So deliveries of these products were delayed by months. So insufficient inputs have been a concern since the COVID-19 pandemic began. And due to an abrupt rise, like I said, after the pandemic has subsided, there has been a surge in consumer demand like never seen before. So even now, the retailers and suppliers are struggling to meet this demand in the midst of limited availability of many parts and many materials. Then comes forecasts. As we have said that every company has forecasts. We forecast our sales, and on the basis of our sales forecast, we have to make a forecast for the materials and parts that we have to purchase and procure. So the onset of COVID-19 essentially has shattered the forecasts for all retailers and suppliers of consumer goods and services. And basically now they have to relook, and they have to find out new models of forecasting, and how much of inventory do we have to keep, and how can we manage our lead times, because uncertainties have increased like never before, and this uncertainty will persist for a long time to come. Inflation in prices, yes, we have seen 2022 basically will be remembered as the year of inflation. Inflation in the prices of everything from raw materials to finished products. We are facing, we as consumers are facing, we are seeing that how the prices of materials and food and other products have gone up in the past 1.5 years. So as this period of inflation will stretch on, central banks are struggling to control inflation. Businesses must be prepared for cost increase related to the procurement of raw materials, finished products, and more. So how can they pass on these costs, or how much of price increases can they absorb? Because this will again lead to decrease in profitability. The consequences of these climbing costs will translate to excess or surplus inventory in some cases, mounting storage fees, the rentals that you have to pay for warehouses, these will increase, your margins will shrink, okay, and in the end you will have lower revenue for product-based brands. So all these things are again challenges. On-time pickup and delivery performance due to again problems in the transport and unavailability of containers and shipping slots, etc. Manpower shortages. Yes, this is a very important thing, that there is a huge shortage of trained and qualified personnel in the field of logistics and supply chain, and that is why organizations, the institutions are now offering master level courses specializing in logistics and supply chain, because there is a huge demand and supply gap in the logistics industry, supply chain industry all over the world, and in India too, where the supply chain basically is a very, very fast growing industry with so many manufacturers coming in and manufacturing being scaled up. There is a huge demand and supply gap. So there is a huge manpower shortage. So these are some of the challenges that are being faced worldwide. Now, coming up to how, as a manager, can we, overcome these challenges, that we have to see. So one of the key areas is that we cannot put all our eggs in one basket, as they say. We have to diversify our sourcing. We cannot source, or we cannot depend on one particular country, for example. Or we have seen what happened to countries which were depending too much on Ukraine, on Russia for their materials and parts. What has happened to them, how they are struggling. And we cannot also depend too much on one particular supplier, because anything can happen to a supplier, then it is going to affect your production and your ability to meet the customer demand in a very bad way. So companies, basically, you have to broaden their range of sourcing, including geographically. You have to go to more countries. You have to find out suppliers in diverse parts of the world to increase the choice as well as the abundance within the supply chain. So by developing relationship with multiple suppliers, it is easier to become more flexible. It gives you flexibility, and it becomes a little easier for a company to adjust to a completely constantly changing market. For example, a prolonged pandemic, for example, may come again in the future. This will alter the whole global, like for this time, the whole global economy has been altered. So if you have, suppliers who are, you're depending too much on one country, for example, China, for example, is still struggling to reopen and to come back to the pre-COVID situation. So those companies who are sourcing, most of their material from China, they still are facing a lot of material shortages. So this is number one. The second thing is you have to work with freight forwarders. If you cannot find out, low cost transportation, or then you have to work with professionals. Freight forwarders are professional organizations who will book, your slots on ships, on planes, or they will book trucks, etc. for you. They will take care of the documentation and other formalities at the ports and the airports. So these are professional companies which will help you in transportation. So it makes sense to work with multiple freight forwarders in order to reduce the cost, because these guys are professionals. They have contacts with the shipping lines, etc. So they can procure a good deal for you, which maybe you yourself may not be able to do if you approach shipping companies by yourself. So partnering with one or more freight forwarders can actually help a company to manage and also to track the shipment of your goods. Freight forwarding companies are accountable for the transportation of products from one destination to the next. They can also arrange for the entire process, that is the documentation, the sourcing, etc., for the shippers, that is for the companies, and they can negotiate the best price or the fastest route. So retailers who work with a freight forwarder benefit from their vast knowledge of the supply chain, in addition to their ability to handle unforeseen circumstances. Like, for example, if there is any delay or anything. So the freight forwarders, these are people who are resourceful. They have contacts in the industry. So they will be able to help you, and you should work with multiple freight forwarders. This is another way of overcoming some challenges. The next one is demand forecasting. You have to improve your demand forecasting, and the best way is to do this by using automation. So nowadays we have many advanced softwares that are available, which will help you in the process of forecasting, and you can calculate your metrics on regarding demand forecasting for each and every product, for each and every, for example, component, using these advanced software. So companies are always looking for a balance between their inventory level and their warehousing costs, and also the demand, in order to prevent any kind of stockouts or shortages. So if you do demand forecasting, you can, if you prioritize your demand forecasting and spend money on demand forecasting, then you can streamline your inventory counts, you can manage your inventory well, and you can reduce any excessive spending or expenditure. So this is another way, going in for automation softwares to improve demand forecasting. The next point, of course, everybody knows, is to invest in technology. Modern technology, especially softwares, artificial intelligence, blockchains, etc. These can go a long way in solving several problems related to things like inventory management, transport scheduling, supply base, and vendor management. So a company has to spend, and now companies are, increasing their spends. Post-pandemic, companies are spending more and more money on, technologies and softwares to, when it comes to supply chain. So use of technology, basically you should invest in these modern technologies in order to remain resilient and to survive in these difficult market conditions. So use of technology helps to reduce the costs, help to improve lead times, reduce inventory levels, and ultimately they will help to create value for the supply chains. Then increase the visibility. What is the visibility? Visibility means how much you can see or how much is visible of your supply chain. As the parts or the things are moving from one place to another, how far down the supply chain or how far up the supply chain can you see? The more the visibility, the more is your control. Visibility leads to better and effective control. So supply chain visibility means having an internal view of all your activities and operations and products that are moving or happening from the point of view of from raw material extraction, from the source of the raw material till the point of consumption. So what happens if you have increased visibility? Well, enhanced visibility will reduce uncertainty and fluctuations in the flow of goods and information across the supply chain. How can you do this? There are many ways. First of all, analyze your supply chain, connect with your stakeholders, map all your supply chain processes, and try to see where wasteful activities can be removed. Work closely, partner with your suppliers and your other partners, your sellers, etc. Okay, so that you can understand and they can understand you better. Your technology goes a long way in increasing visibility. Cloud computing, blockchains, and artificial intelligence, especially these three technologies, will go a long way in improving supply chain visibility. And of course, you can use key performance indicators. These are the measures which you have on the key performance aspects. You have to develop these KPIs and you have to measure the KPIs, and you have to see that these supply chain KPIs, for example, lead time, for example, transportation cost, for example, okay, storage cost, for example, these are key performance indicators which will indicate or which will show you a performance of the supply chain. You have to measure them and keep on improving them. These are some things which can improve or increase the visibility of the supply chain. And like I said, the more visibility, the more control you have over the supply chain. This is another way of, last but not the least, invest in human resources. Okay, human resources are the most precious resources, but perhaps the most neglected resources. We focus more on fixed assets and financial resources, but we forget the human aspect. Okay, so supply chain professionals, like I said, there is a huge demand and supply gap all over the world for qualified supply chain and logistics professionals. So supply chain professionals with adequate experience and knowledge, they are very hard to get, very hard to come by. Therefore, the industry is facing high attrition rates. Attrition means turnover. As people get better offers from other companies, they are leaving and they are going, shifting companies, and therefore the attrition rates are very high in this industry. Companies have to invest in the HR function by offering competitive salary packages, and it's not only salaries, other non-financial incentives in order to attract and to retain the best talent in this field. Proper needs analysis, this is the HR part, needs analysis, succession planning, etc. for key roles is a must in order to avoid any kind of void or any kind of gap in your skill pool. So investing in human resources is a good way of overcoming some of the challenges that a company faces in the supply chain. And of course, in general, by doing all this, you have to make your supply chain lean and agile. Lean and agile. Agile means flexible, because we know that anything can happen. There is a lot of uncertainty. So how do we respond to this uncertainty? We have to be on our feet. We have to be very fast. We have to be very nimble. Lean means cutting out all the excess or all the wastages, all those activities and processes which are unnecessary and unneeded. Wherever we can reduce our manpower, wherever we can reduce our costs, this is called, when we remove all this, then we will focus only on the key activities, only on the needed activities. So this will make our supply chain lean and agile. So lean and agile supply chains are resilient supply chains. Resilient means those which can face any kind of adverse situation and adverse condition. So we have to make our supply chains lean, agile, and resilient by going through all these, some of these points that I have discussed today, and many more are there, which due to time constraints and we cannot discuss everything in detail. So with this, finally, I come to the end of my presentation. I know that time was short and I was a little, maybe I have hurried through some points. Of course, this is a field where there is so much to discuss upon. So 1 hour or 1.5 hours is just not enough, but we do have constraints of time. So with this, I would like to, hand over again to Dr. Sudhanshu. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, sir. It was wonderful presentation. Hope students certainly would have enjoyed this session. I have enjoyed it very much. It was a brush up, a review, though we two are dealing with the same thing, but it is indeed a pleasure listening these things. And it was such a clear-cut presentation, clear concept, clear-cut presentation, and pleasurable. It's we enjoyed it so very much, sir. Sir, we have a certain question we have received. Our team has received certain questions from the students. If you allow me to.
Sure, yes.
The questions are very simple, yet since they are from the student side, hope you don't mind the level of the questions.
Of course, we are ultimately here for them, right?
Right, sir, right. Sir, there is a question: how the supply chain increases the value as per customer point of view?
Well, you see, from the customer point of view. So you see, what does the customer look for? The customer looks for maximum benefits. The concept of value, first of all, we have to understand, what do you mean by the concept of value? Value is nothing but a ratio of benefits to cost. What are the benefits that the customer is receiving from the product compared to how much money you are paying for the product? So you see, when do customers buy products? Customers will buy a product whenever you go to buy a product, in your mind, unconsciously, what are you looking at? You are looking at the features of the product, what the product can do, what you can get from it, and you, in your mind, you are comparing it to the cost. So you are going to buy a mobile phone. The cost of the mobile phone is 20,000 rupees. So you are looking at the features of the mobile phone, right? You are looking at the camera, you are looking at the battery life, you are looking at the screen, you are looking at the design, and then you are comparing it with the cost. Is this mobile phone worth 20,000 rupees? If you feel that yes, the features are justifying the price, then only you say that there is a value, and then only you will buy the product. On the other hand, if you feel that no, that 20,000 rupees is too much compared to what I am getting from this phone. Maybe the battery life is not so good, maybe the camera is not so good. You feel that for 20,000 rupees, it should have been a better camera or a better screen. Then in this case, you say that the product is expensive. Now you see the supply chain, how the question is very good, that how the customer can, what is delivering value through the supply chain. In the supply chain, we are trying to do, or we are trying to provide the best at every stage. So right from the raw material, if you are following, or if you are making your supply chain a value chain, you are first of all integrating all your primary and secondary activities. So right from the sourcing of the raw material, you will go to great lengths to ensure that you are getting the best quality of raw material. Number one, for example. So when your raw material is of a good quality, okay, but naturally your product will be of a high quality, for example. Then we talked about technology. So if you are integrating, or if you are looking for value in a supply chain, you will use the latest or the best available technology to make the product. So what are you doing? Are you not adding value? So a supply chain basically is somewhere where at every step we are trying to see how can we maximize the value that we are adding to the product. Whether it is raw material, whether it is the machinery that we are using, whether it is the technology that we are using, whether it is the transportation that we are using, everywhere we are trying to make the product better. Why? With the sole intention that by the time the product reaches the hand of the customer, he or she is able to get the best possible product at the lowest possible price. So this is how the intention of a value chain basically is to provide the best value for the customer by improving, or by adding, maximizing the value at every step of the way.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. There is another question. Though you have touched this point in while discussing the importance of supply chain, but the question goes like this: how can cost efficiency be brought in our supply chain management?
Well, like I said, what is a supply chain? A supply chain is everything from A to Z. Now, when I said that you have to map your processes, you have to look at all your processes. Look at your sourcing process. Look at your negotiation with the suppliers. You can cut costs everywhere. For example, you can negotiate with suppliers for discounts, or you can search for new supply base. You can search for new suppliers who can give you product at a lower price. You can negotiate transportation costs with the transporters. That is why I said you have to go with freight forwarders, because they are specialists. They will negotiate the best prices for you when it comes to transportation. You can try to cut down inefficient processes in operations, that is in your plant and factory. You can try to cut down your costs when it comes to marketing and advertising. So you see, this is an integrated view, but this has to be broken up process wise, because like I said, supply chain is a whole basket. So in this basket, every process, there is a scope for cost cutting. Okay, so this is not something which you are looking at as one whole picture. Okay, you have to map each process, and you have to study each process, and you have to see that where are the places, or where are the points that we can reduce our cost. So there are many ways, like implementing technology, which is a one-time cost. But implementing technology can help you in reducing your lead time, can help you in increasing your tracking, can help you in managing your inventory, for example. Inventory cost is around 20% of supply chain cost. If you can use the latest technology, okay, you can reduce your lead time. Then if from 20% you bring it down to even 10%, that means you are reducing the total cost by 10%, which is a very big amount. So there is a scope for cost cutting at every step of the supply chain, basically.
Thank you, sir. There is a question from first year MBA first year students. This is the question from Ritesh Kumar Singh and Vikas Maurya. They ask, what aspects of supply chain could be outsourced?
What aspects of the supply chain can be outsourced? Well, basically, to be very honest, any aspect of the supply chain can be outsourced. There are some companies which have outsourced their entire supply chain. That means they have specialists who are procuring the product for them. They have others who are doing the transportation and inventory management for them. Okay, there are companies which have outsourced the entire manufacturing process to others. Okay, so you can outsource your entire supply chain, or you can outsource any of the components of the supply chain. For example, you feel that it is not possible for you to find suppliers all over the world. You do not have those contacts. Okay, fine. So there are specialists, procurers. You contact them. They will find suppliers for you and they will negotiate contracts with you. Okay. Or for example, you feel that most of the companies, for example, do not handle their own transportation. There are some companies which have their own trucks and which have their own, ships, for example, but they are very, very few. So transportation, for example, is totally outsourced. You are getting it done by others, right? So like this, even the technology aspect can be outsourced. Okay, you can have companies managing your managed inventory, for example. You can have companies which are managing your other softwares, your databases, for example. So it depends upon the company. Entire supply chain can be outsourced, or any aspect of the supply chain can be outsourced. Nowadays, outsourcing has become a very, very flexible thing. And there are companies, third-party logistics providers, fourth-party logistics providers who are there, who can handle any aspect of your logistics and supply chain. Wherever you feel that others can do the process better than you, wherever you feel that others can do the things at a lesser cost than yourself, go for outsourcing.
And this paves the way for developing economies to find a way there.
Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. If you look at, for example, developing companies like Vietnam, China, Thailand, what was China 30 years ago? China became China because of what? Because of outsourcing. Right? Vietnam is Vietnam today because of outsourcing. Of course. Indian software industry is the biggest example of outsourcing. All these American companies have offshored their work to companies, TCS, Infosys, Mindtree, etc. They are sitting in Bangalore. Instead of doing the work in America, they have outsourced all these things and they are developing the whole software. They are implementing the whole
ready-made
software.
Cotton garments in Bangladesh.
Yes, outsource it. If you cannot make ready-made cotton garments in Europe, outsource them to manufacturers in Bangladesh or Laos or Vietnam or wherever it is. All big companies, all big brands, they outsource their manufacturing to different countries across Asia. Asia basically is now the outsourcing capital of the world. If you look at it, Asia is now the outsourcing capital of the world. Look at Indian pharma industry. How many generic manufacturers are there who are manufacturing for the brand names? Thousands of generic drugs are being. India is the largest manufacturer of generic medicines in the whole world. Companies in America and Europe, they are getting their medicines manufactured in India. So outsourcing, definitely, it is a very effective tool to reduce your cost, to become more cost effective, to become more efficient. And outsourcing generates, there are spin-offs. It generates huge employment opportunities in areas which otherwise may not have developed by themselves. But because of outsourcing opportunities, companies out there are getting the advantage. Okay, they are able to produce the same things at low cost. It produces jobs for the locals. It boosts the economy of those countries. All these countries that I'm talking about, they all came up somehow by this way. Manufacturing was not their sole this thing, was not their sole or first priority. So outsourcing can be done. Any component can be outsourced. There are third-party logistics, fourth-party logistics. Sometimes third-party logistics are outsourcing to others. So outsourced work is outsourced further ahead. That is called fourth party, 4PL. Right?
Thank you, sir. There is another question which says, how artificial intelligence help in supply chain management?
Well, that is a very technical question. Okay, but artificial intelligence, for example, artificial intelligence can help you in demand forecasting. So okay, you put in the data, okay, of the past years, you put in anticipated whatever demand you have, and the software or artificial intelligence, using the software and artificial intelligence tools, they will provide accurate forecasts for you regarding what kind of how much of raw materials you need, regarding how much of parts you need, for example. This is just an example. Artificial intelligence can be used for design, okay, when it comes to manufacturing. So there are many applications of artificial intelligence. Is not a standalone tool. Artificial intelligence has to be used along with other technologies, like cloud computing, like blockchain. Blockchain has huge amount of effectiveness when it comes to retail, when it comes to retailing, when it comes to supply chain. I can take another 1 hour lecture on the implementation, on the use of blockchain when it comes to supply chain management. I would urge your students to look up that on these things, to broaden, to increase their, to expand their knowledge base, how artificial intelligence and how specifically blockchains can help in supply chains.
We are assigning projects on these issues.
A lot of research papers. There are many areas on which blockchain, because blockchain is a step by step, and each block is separate from each other, right? It cannot be removed, it cannot be eliminated. There are many advantages of blockchain technology which can be implemented in supply chains.
Yes,
you can track the sources of your raw materials, for example.
Thank you, sir. This another, if you allow me, the last question that I'm going to take.
Sir, I would please request you, just one more question, because I have another meeting.
Time running out of time. So thank you so very much for you.
Now I can take that last question. There is one last question you said.
The question is all about, is it all about using software while planning to track your products and material in supply chain?
It's not all about software. Remember, software cannot substitute the experience and skill of a human mind. Software is an aid. Okay, so you have to make a transportation schedule, for example. You know that where your suppliers are. You have an idea of what materials you need. You have an idea of what your lead times are. The software will just maybe help you to find out the best possible routes to reduce your lead time. So software is not a substitute for the human element. Software is just used as an aid, as a tool to help when it comes to supply chain planning. It is an aid, it is not a substitute. It can never be a substitute.
Thank you very much,
for
sir.
Planning and other activities. Yes, for manufacturing, yes, maybe you can use robots and you can use all these things. You can replace human beings in manufacturing and operations. But when it comes to planning and taking operational decisions, softwares cannot replace human beings. Otherwise, there would be no need for all these highly paid senior level managers. We could just fire them and we could use software instead. Could save a lot of money.
Thank you so very much, sir. You dealt on every aspect of the subject at length. You discussed about logistics, supply chain, inventory, objectives of supply chain, process view of supply chain, cycle view, push pull, different order cycles, issues that C managers face, how cost can be reduced, how to deal with volatile environment. You talked about artificial intelligence, blockchain. You talked at length about every aspect of supply chain, logistics, and inventory. What a wonderful session it was, sir. I enjoyed, and my students too have enjoyed this session. The questions are mark of their presence, their how much they have enjoyed this.
I appreciate students. If they don't ask questions,
yes,
then that means they are not learning.
Yes, this is the mark of their presence.
Yes, of course.
So thank you so very much, sir.
I wish all your students all the very best in their studies, in their career. Learn to be relevant, learn to be updated. okay, today, and learn to use the latest skills, add certain other certificate courses which will add as a complement to your MBA degree. Yes. You have to make yourself industry ready. Yes. An MBA degree alone won't help. Today's market has become different. It's not like when we graduated 22 years back. Yes. Okay. Nowadays, employers look for many other value add-ons. Like somebody was asking about value add-ons. So your employer will look for value add-ons. Okay, you have an MBA. What else can you do? So you have to equip yourself for that. And knowledge. Knowledge is what takes you ahead. Please go through every day. Read the Economic Times. Read all the. This was what we were told by our professors in those days. We did not realize the importance at that time. But later on, we understood why they used to say. So we will say the same things to you. Maybe today you will, why are we being said these things? But 3-4 years down the line, you will realize that it is knowledge actually which takes you ahead. So
every day I say that it is the economics which is, yes. Every day I tell them that economics is the mother of our branch. Unless you keep abreast with the latest changes in economy, how can you deal with the management sciences? Sir, we have our director, Dr. Mrinal Kanti sir, with us to extend a formal vote of thanks to you. Over to director, sir.
Okay, thank you, Sudhanshu ji. Good afternoon to all. I, Dr. Mrinal Kanti Mani, Director of LDC Institute of Technical Studies, Sorao, Prayagraj, feel honored and privileged to get the opportunity to convey vote of thanks to the delegates as well as all the members present in the ceremony today. At the beginning, I congratulate to Dr. Shouvik Sanyal, and I pay my heartiest thanks to him for his valuable, wonderful lecture for the topic of supply chain management system. He narrated in details. His presentation in this slide was very good and understanding, and really he is one of the pillar and the masters in his own domain. I convey thanks to him as I pay my gratitude for his great learning and experience in the field of the management. I also convey my gratitude and thanks to our Honorable Chairman, Mr. Sanjay Gupta, for his inspiration and initial support in this juncture. I pay my special thanks to Mr. Suyash Gupta, leading visionary of this group, for continuous support and guidance for this journey. I also pay my thanks and gratitude and say my congratulations to Mr. Sudhanshu Singh, Dr. Sudhanshu Singh and his team for his continuous journey from the initiation to pursuing this international series of guest lecture. Apart from his normal activities, he continuously worked on this venture and finally make this lecture series under the grand success. Really, thanks to Sudhanshu sir and team. I also support and provide my thanks to the support team, those who are assisting this lecture to be continued from the beginning to till now. At the last but not least, I pay my diligence and support to the thanks of all the students, faculties, staff, associates, all learners, and the members, those who will listen and see the topic of Mr. Dr. Sanyal, Professor of Dhopar University, Oman. Really, it's a wonderful session and sharing his views and lecture in the field of chain of management. It's a wonderful topic, and it will definitely give the enhancement in the academic career of each and individual, those who will be associated with his program or with his topic, that to be later on provided in the YouTube and Facebook. Thank you to all the members associated in this journey today, and at the end, special thanks to Dr. Shouvik sir. Thanks a lot.
Sir, I have a request to Dr. Sudhanshu.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Sudhanshu, if you can send me a link to the recording or something, if there is a recording, If you
Yes,
can
yes,
send
we
me
will.
a link to the recording, it will be a big help.
We will. We certainly will. In a short while
Thank
from
you,
now,
sir.
we'll be sending the
Okay,
recording
sir.
of the
Thank
event.
you.
So thank you so
Thank you,
very
sir.
much, sir. So salute
Welcome,
to
most
the
welcome.
great institute, great seat of learning called Dhopar University, your administrators, and the great land you belong to, the Sultanate of Oman, and to you for sparing your valuable moments with us. Thank you so very much. We shall always be grateful to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With this, we come to the end of the session. Thank you so very much.